Hello everyone, Silverstruck here. Welcome to the Silverstruck channel. I have an amazing new find to share with all of you. I was able to acquire a couple of 10-ounce vintage Johnson Matthey press bars of a certain variety that I'd been looking for a while and didn't expect to find them in the 10-ounce weight, but got to take those opportunities when you can find them. Before I get into the new acquisition and a little bit of history behind them, I want to talk a little bit about collecting Johnson Matthey bars. The first thing you need to know about Johnson Matthey is the name is still being used in production to this day. So not all Johnson Matthey bars are vintage. There are some modern varieties. Mostly they begin with a leading A prefix. So don't go running out there and just buy any old Johnson Matthey bar if you're into collecting. If you're into stacking, it won't matter. But if you want to collect rare or at least vintage bars, then you'll want to pay attention to what you're actually picking up out there, whether it's at a coin show or coin shop. So anyhow, now that we've established vintage versus non-vintage, what we're looking at here are all vintage Johnson Matthey bars. They're older. Most of these, I believe, actually all of them will have no leading prefix at all. So they're definitely older variety Johnson Matthey bars. Now, when you take a look at a Johnson Matthey, oftentimes the obverse is very similar. This is a obverse that's used quite a bit. So we have the Johnson Matthey logo with the cross hammers at the top. And you can see it says Johnson Matthey in big font below that. And then smaller Assayers Refiners in a box there. Fine silver, 3.9 under that, so your fineness. And then 10 ounces troy, which is your weight, and oftentimes will be a serial number. The reverse of the Johnson Matthey bars is an important part of collecting. So as we flip this one over, this has more of your traditional reverse, if you will. There's a few different varieties. Here we have the Johnson Matthey logo repeated 3 times in full. There's a 6-time in full variety. There's mirror back varieties. There's different types. So here we have a different, slightly different obverse here with the Johnson Matthey logo, but then you have the Johnson Matthey in wording replaced by Assayers Refiners. This one's in original packaging. If you're new to collecting, original packaging is OP. Sometimes that can add value to the bar. It certainly protects the bar. And this one here is a mirror back. So there are certain varieties, not all of them are rare for sure. There are standard production bars that Johnson Matthey put out there. And then there's bars that are obviously different, but produced by Johnson Matthey. These are some good examples right here. This is a very popular bar, really, among collectors. This is one that's sought after, mintage of about 3,000, so not the rarest of rare by any stretch. But here we have Republic National Bank of New York bar. So we flip this one over, we can see at the bottom, that's what makes it a Johnson Matthey. Obviously, Johnson Matthey produced this bar for the bank, and the serial number is on the reverse. So sometimes you got to look for that logo. This is another example of that. This is a very, very highly sought after, but also very popular theme here. Here we have a Statue of Liberty bar. This one in fantastic condition in the OP. As we flip this one over, you can see there, Johnson Matthey. Also Engelhard and Metal Arts produced bars exactly like this. So you have to just look for that logo somewhere on the bar, whether it's in the obverse or the reverse. Always flip over a Johnson Matthey bar. There are other channels that talk about that. I've mentioned it several times myself in the past. Whenever you're really searching for a collectible, make sure you check out all aspects of the bar, including the reverse of the bar. So, without further delay, let's check out these new bars I was able to pick up, and I'll talk about those. All right, my friends, here we go. I have 20 ounces of beautiful vintage silver in the form of these two 10-ounce pressed silver bars. As you can see from the serial numbers, we also have sequential serial numbers, 005013 and 005014. Sequential numbers don't always add value. I always get a comment or two in these videos about either sequential numbers not mattering or serial numbers not mattering. And if you're a stacker, they certainly really wouldn't be a factor at all. But when you're a collector, they kind of are a factor. Bars like this have been together for decades and decades, never apart. And as a collector, that's my goal is to keep these as a set. I would never offer one for sale without the other. If I were to sell, these are kind of perma-stack bars as we get into it. So there's that. I think that sequential numbers and serial numbers in general for a collector certainly does matter. That's me. I can't sit here and tell you that it's going to add a certain dollar value. I think as time goes on, they'll be worth more and more as the decades tick on. It'll be harder and harder to find a pair of these with sequential numbers. So enough about the sequential serial numbers. Let's talk about how I was able to acquire these bars. Typically, I'll buy my bars in person because I want to see the condition. I want to hold the silver. So I'll usually buy from a local coin shop, or I'll purchase from Coin Show if I'm lucky enough to go to one of those. This time I paid a premium and purchased these from an online auction, which is typically not my style. I'll do that from time to time. So the bars were worth the money in my opinion, and I was really excited to see the condition is fantastic. So let's have a close-up look at one of these bars, and we're going to pick on this one right here. Part of the reason why I really enjoy serial numbers is it really helps identify the bar. Certain different date runs, and it is very handy, especially if you're using allinggohard.com as a resource. So take a look at the bar. As I was saying in the beginning of the video, the obverse is the same pretty much. So here we have your classic Johnson Matthey obverse, the JM logo with the cross hammers at the top, the name spelled out, Johnson Matthey, assayers and refiners. In the box will be the fineness, fine silver 999. Beneath that, the weight, 10 ounces Troy, and then that serial number right there. You can see this bar is in outstanding shape. No scrapes or scratches, mirror finish. Very difficult not to face reveal on something like this. Let's have a look at the reverse of the bar. And here we have what I was after. So this is a certain variety. Here we have a Rancher's Exploration Escalante Mine bar. So instead of a blank back, mirror back, or logo reverse, here we have a completely different variety. And these are just really, really neat. They were available in different weights. So you could find bars such as this in 5 ounce and 1 ounce. Not sure if they went in higher weight into the 100 ounce realm or not, but just a wonderful, wonderful find to find a pair of these sequentially numbered. Let's check out a pick from allinggohard.com, and it's one of my favorite resources, as you know. You can see here that there's two different varieties of this bar. There's a dated variety, 1982, and an undated. So the undated bar is the one that I have here, and of course that means that I have to try to find a dated variety. That's one more item to collect, right? But you can see the mintages from allinggohard.com are at 1,000 each. So if not rare, certainly scarce. And then you have to figure on top of that survival rate. Survival rate is one of the biggest factors for collecting. How many of these were melted down over the years? Hard to know, but as you look around, you're not going to find these bars readily available. You have to do some digging to be able to acquire them. So I hope you enjoyed this portion of the video. If you're into history, you may like the second half of the video. But if you're just here for the silver, there you are. Now let's talk about the origin story of these bars. And I have some information to share. And as I go along, I'm going to have credits in the description of this video. But I'm also going to give credit verbally to make sure the credit gets where it needs to go. So let's start from the beginning of this origin story. And that's the actual mine itself. So I found an article from the New York Times. And it says exactly this. In 1896, a prospector named Heber Holt found and claimed the Escalante silver mine in southwest Utah. But his dreams of quick wealth were frustrated when the cost of getting the silver out proved to be too high. Nearly a century later, with higher silver prices and more sophisticated extraction techniques, the Rancher's Exploration and Development Corporation had no such trouble. So that was a couple choice paragraphs from a long New York Times article just to establish the origin of the mine itself. Now, much later, the Ranchers Exploration and Development Corporation acquired the Escalante Mine in 1979. Another resource I found very handy was the Washington County Historical Society. Here we have an article that was written by Terry Draper and published in the St. George magazine. Now, I circled her name because of Draper. Draper is a famous name if you're a vintage silver collector. Draper Mint. Is there a connection there? I don't know. I did Google her, and she's still around today, but I didn't reach out to her and ask, but I found that last name very interesting. I'm going to only read a small bit of this article here, and it starts here. The Escalante silver mine, located about 50 miles northwest of St. George, has produced over 5,800,000 ounces of silver in a short 5 years since Ranchers Exploration and Development had acquired it in 1979. Almost 6 million ounces. That's mind-blowing, the amount of volume that they were able to pull out of that mine. I think that's just a little fantastic bit of history right there. I did some more research on the Ranchers Exploration and Development Corporation, and here's an article from allenglehart.com. It's actually on the collector page, and you can see here that a gold bar is featured with a counter stamp from Ranchers, so they had their hands on all sorts of different things. I thought that was interesting. But let me read. You can read along if you like. A little bit about Ranchers. So it was established in 1954. Hot air balloonist Maxie Anderson founded Ranchers Exploration and Development Corporation of Albuquerque, New Mexico in 1954. Ranchers Exploration innovated a vertical extraction technology called vertical crater retreat. Ranchers Exploration operated Escalante Mine in southern Utah, as well as Old Reliable Mine by Copper Creek, Arizona. Here's where it gets even more interesting. Hecla Mining Company and Sunshine Mining Company entered into a takeover bid to acquire Ranchers Exploration in 1984. Hecla Mining Company prevailed and closed the Escalante Mine in December of 1988. So pretty interesting little run right there. They go on to say that they believe these bars were produced 1982 and 1983. Well, thanks to dates on the silver itself, we know the 1982 bar was certainly in 1982. The undated bars were the 83s. I don't think there's any real way to know. We're talking about several defunct organizations and companies. There's got to be paperwork that's lost along the way. So sometimes it's a little bit of a frustration if you're into history and documenting certain silver bars. Sometimes the information is just not available. Lots of information this time around. This is pretty fun to learn all of this. So, in a summary here, let me sum it all up. The mine itself was founded in 1896. 83 years later, Ranchers bought it in 1979 and ran it for 5 years, then sold it to Hecla in 1984 when Sunshine Mining lost out, and then Hecla closed the mine in 1988. So just fascinating history right there. I did want to show here at the end of the video a pic of the mine itself. So back to a article from the Washington County Historical Society. Here's an article showing a little bit about the mining company and what they were trying to do. There was painfully few pics about the mine, so no such luck with a lot of photos. I could do some more digging, but thought that was pretty interesting. All right, my friends, so if you made it to the end of this video, you must be a vintage fan or a history buff, or maybe a mix of the two like I am. I like vintage silver and history. You'll have to let me know your feelings on the Ranchers Exploration bars and history in the comment section. You know I love talking with all of you. And as always, thank you so much for watching.